Think about the person you gave the most to, not the person you liked the most. Not the person you love the most in the easy, effortless way love sometimes arrives. The person you gave the most to. The one you showed up for when nobody else did. The one you defended when the room turned against them. The one you lent money to when they had nothing and asked for nothing back. The one you stayed up with through the crisis, through the breakdown, through the moment when they had completely fallen apart and needed someone to hold the pieces together. The one you sacrificed for, quietly, consistently, without keeping score. Now ask yourself the question most people are too afraid to ask. Where are they now? Not where are they in terms of their life, their career, their circumstances, their happiness. Where are they in relation to you? Because if you are honest, if you sit with this question long enough to let the real answer surface, many of you will find something that does not make sense. The person you gave the least to is often the most loyal. The person you gave everything to is often gone, or distant, or critical, or the source of a specific quiet pain you have never fully been able to explain. If this is your experience, you are not unlucky. You are not a bad judge of character. You have simply stumbled into one of the most brutal and consistent patterns in all of human psychology. A pattern Friedrich Nietzsche identified more than a century ago and described with a precision so uncomfortable that most people, even today, cannot fully bring themselves to accept it. The person you save will be the one who buries you. Today, we go all the way into this, into the psychology, into the mechanism, into why it happens, what it produces, and, most importantly, what it means for every relationship in your life going forward. Stay until the end, because the final lesson is not about bitterness. It is not about closing yourself off. It is about something far more valuable than either of those things. It is about wisdom, the hard kind, the earned kind, the kind that only arrives after you have been hurt in exactly this specific way. 1. The invisible debt that poisons everything. To understand why the person you save becomes the one who hurts you most, you have to understand something about the human psyche that almost nobody is taught. Receiving creates debt, and debt, emotional debt specifically, is one of the most corrosive forces in any human relationship. This is not a moral judgment. It is not a criticism of the people who received your help and later turned on you. It is simply an honest description of how the human mind processes significant imbalance. When you help someone in a meaningful way, when the help is large enough, significant enough, visible enough, you create something in that person that they did not ask for and cannot easily carry. Obligation, not the clean, manageable obligation of a small favor, the heavy, complicated obligation of a debt they may never be able to repay. And this is where the psychology becomes uncomfortable. Because obligation, when it cannot be discharged, when there is no realistic way for the person to give back what they received, does not simply sit there quietly. It transforms. First, it becomes discomfort, a low-level unease in your presence, a slight tension when they think of you, something they cannot name but feels consistently. Then it becomes resentment, not rational, not fair, not conscious even, but real. The resentment of someone who is reminded every time they see you of a moment when they were not enough, when they needed, when they could not manage alone, when someone else, you specifically, had to come and do what they could not. You became the witness to their weakness. And some people would rather burn the witness than carry the memory. Nietzsche saw this with devastating clarity. He understood that the ego, the human need to feel capable, autonomous, powerful, will protect itself at almost any cost, even the cost of the relationship that helped it survive. 2. Why your help rewrote the story. Here is something that will take a moment to absorb. When you saved someone, when you showed up at the moment of their greatest need and provided what they could not provide for themselves, you did not just help them. You became a permanent character in a story they are still telling about themselves. And here is the problem. The story most people tell about themselves requires them to be the protagonist, the one who overcame, the one who figured it out, the one who rose. Your presence in that story, the person who arrived when they were down, who provided what they lacked, who held what was falling apart, complicates the narrative. Because a story in which someone else saved you is not the same as a story in which you saved yourself, and most people over time cannot live comfortably with the first version. So the story gets revised, slowly, unconsciously, without deliberate dishonesty. Your role shrinks, the help you gave gets minimized, not to others necessarily, but in their own internal account. The moment of their weakness gets reframed, as a temporary glitch, as something that would have resolved itself, as something they were already handling before you arrived, and you, the person who actually showed up, get recast. Sometimes as irrelevant, sometimes as someone who interfered, sometimes in the most extreme revisions as someone who made things worse. Not because they are evil, Because the human mind cannot sustain a version of itself that requires permanent gratitude to another person. Permanent gratitude requires permanent acknowledgement of permanent debt, and permanent debt is incompatible with the self-image most people require to function. So they rewrite, and in the rewriting, you become the problem. 3. The mirror you became. There is another dimension to this that Nietzsche explored with particular precision. When you are doing well, when the person you saved watches you succeed, stabilize, grow, something specific happens in them. Your success becomes a mirror, and what it reflects back is the distance between where they are and where you are. This would be manageable if the relationship were equal. If you had both started from the same place, faced the same challenges, made the same sacrifices. But it is not equal, because they know even if they have revised the story, even if they have minimized the help, that there was a moment when they needed you, and now you are ahead, or stable, or simply visibly. Okay, and that gap between their current position and yours, filtered through the memory of their own need, produces something Nietzsche named with a word borrowed from French, ressentiment, not simple jealousy, something more complex and more poisonous. The specific bitterness of someone who feels that the gap between themselves and another person is not just painful but unjust, who constructs, unconsciously but systematically, a moral case for why your success is not deserved, why your stability is actually arrogance, why your confidence is actually condescension, why the person who helped them is, upon closer examination, actually the villain. This construction does not happen in a single moment. It builds slowly, over months, sometimes years. Assembled from small pieces, a comment here, an interpretation there, a memory slightly adjusted, until the picture is complete, until the person who saved them has, in their internal narrative, become the person who held them back. And at that point, when the revision is complete, they are not betraying you. In their mind, they are finally being honest about you. 4. The specific pain of this betrayal. There are many kinds of betrayal. The betrayal of someone who was always selfish, finally showing their selfishness. The betrayal of someone you never fully trusted, confirming your instinct. The betrayal of a stranger, or a colleague, or someone who was never close. These hurt, but they are manageable. Because there was always some part of you that held something back, some protective distance maintained. This betrayal is different. The betrayal of the person you saved, the one you showed up for completely, the one you gave without reservation, the one you believed in when they did not believe in themselves. This betrayal happens in the place where you were most open. It arrives through the gap left by the full giving of yourself. It uses the access you granted in your most generous moment, and it produces a specific kind of wound that other betrayals don't. Not just pain, confusion, the deep, disorienting confusion of someone who cannot make the equation balance, who keeps returning to the math, what I gave, what they received, what they did with it, and finding that it does not add up. Who asks, in the quiet moments, in the space between sleep and waking, what I did wrong, what I missed, what I should have seen. And Nietzsche's answer, uncomfortable, precise, necessary, is that you did not do anything wrong. You simply did not understand the hidden mechanism, the one that transforms the saved into the saboteur, the one that turns gratitude into grievance, the one that makes the person who received the most dangerous one in the room. 5. Why it is always the ones you saved and never the strangers. Pay attention to this pattern in your own life. The people who have hurt you most deeply, are they people you gave little to, or are they almost always people you gave everything to? Think about it honestly. The casual acquaintance does not have the access to wound you deeply. The colleague you never trusted does not have the leverage to reach the places that hurt. The stranger has no map to your vulnerabilities. Only the people you let in completely have that map. And the people you let in most completely, the ones you were most open with, most generous toward, most willing to sacrifice for, they receive the map with the most detail. Every act of saving involves opening. You show up fully. You give fully. You are present completely. And in that presence, that completeness, that full arrival, you reveal yourself, your capacity for sacrifice, your tolerance for being taken from, your willingness to put another person's need above your own comfort, your inability to walk away from someone who is suffering. All of this is visible to the person you saved. All of this is information. And when the revision happens, when the debt becomes resentment and the resentment needs an outlet, they know exactly where to push. Because you showed them in the very act of saving them. This is not a reason to close. It's a reason to be selective about who receives your full arrival. 6. What Nietzsche actually believed about saving people. Here is where the philosophy becomes most important. Because Nietzsche was not cynical about human connection. He was not advocating for isolation, for coldness, for the refusal of all generosity. What he was against, fiercely, precisely, without apology, was a specific form of giving that he considered not noble but destructive. The giving that positions you as the rescuer and them as the rescued. The giving that creates permanent hierarchy in the name of temporary help. The giving that solves the immediate problem while building the long-term dynamic that will eventually poison the relationship. He called this pity-driven giving, and he considered it one of the most harmful forces in human relationships. Not because the giver is bad, but because the structure of the giving, the savior and the saved, is inherently unstable and inherently damaging to the person on the receiving end. When you save someone, when you position yourself as the one who provides what they cannot, you do something to their self-concept that your generosity cannot undo. You confirm in the most concrete possible way that they needed saving, that they were not sufficient, that without you they would not have made it. This is not a gift. It is, at the deepest level, a wound, delivered with the best intentions in the world, wrapped in love and care and genuine sacrifice. But a wound nonetheless. The only giving that does not eventually produce this dynamic is the giving that builds the other person's capacity, that pulls them toward their own strength rather than providing a substitute for it. That says, not I will carry this for you, but I will walk beside you while you learn to carry it yourself. The difference in the moment seems small. The difference over time is everything. 7. The silence after the burial. Let's talk about what happens after. After the person you saved has completed the revision. After the betrayal has occurred, in whatever form it took. After the wound has been delivered and received and you are sitting with the specific, disorienting pain of having been hurt most deeply by the person you helped most completely. What now? Most people respond in one of two ways. The first response is anger, righteous, burning, completely understandable anger. The anger that wants to correct the record, to make sure everyone knows what was given and what was done with it, to expose the ingratitude, to demand the acknowledgement that was never given. This anger is real, it is valid, it is human, and acting on it will cost you everything. Because anger directed at the person who betrayed you gives them something they no longer deserve. Your energy, your attention, your continued emotional investment. It keeps you in relationship with them. A hostile relationship, but a relationship nonetheless. It makes you the one still affected, still reacting, still unable to simply move forward. It gives them, in other words, exactly what they were seeking when they provoked you. Your reaction, your proof that they still matter. The second response is the one most people are too proud to choose: silence, withdrawal, the quiet, dignified, permanent removal of your presence from their life. Not dramatically, not with a speech, not with a final message designed to make them understand the magnitude of what they did. Simply, gone, energy redirected, access revoked, investment permanently withdrawn. And then, this is the hardest part, no further discussion, no monitoring of how they're doing, no checking whether they've realized what they lost, no waiting for the apology that may never come, just the complete, composed, dignified redirection of everything you were giving them toward yourself, toward people who receive well, toward the life you were building before you got distracted by their need. Nietzsche called this the highest form of self-respect, not revenge, not anger, not bitterness. The simple, sovereign decision that some people do not deserve a second chapter in your story.